Oh, God. Come on, the Mighty Ducks. That was a horrendous day. First movie part. And we finally get a take in where the ducks come up to me and I'm like, yeah, no. I do my bit and then cut. And Steve pulls me aside. He goes, you're scaring the ducks. You take it down a notch, It was just a nightmare. Okay, hi, I'm Marc Maron. And sometimes crazy things happen on set and they can often be stressful. This is my stress test. Okay, this is The Joker, which I had a small part in. And on principle, I was generally against comic book movies in general, but somehow or another I was able to justify doing this because it was a DC movie. I had one scene with Robert De Niro. We did the first scene. I went to my chair and then I saw De Niro go to his chair and then I saw De Niro get up and walk over to Todd and then walk back to his chair. And then Todd walked up to me and said, you're coming in a little hot. That was stressful, but I appreciated that he did it professionally, and I think it came out pretty well. Oh, God. Come on, the Mighty Ducks. That was a horrendous day. First movie part. All my part was I played a valet. The ducks came up to me and something like, they're not letting us into any of the stores. And I'm like this angry valet. Oh, you got to know somebody to get into anything in this town. I was just this snappy valet. And I was sweating. I had pit stains, my little valet outfit. I was freaking out. And at some point I called cut because I screwed up. And the producer was there and Steve comes up to me. He's like, you don't call cut. You just, And then we finally get a take in where the ducks come up to me and I'm like, yeah, no. I do my bit and then cut and Steve pulls me aside. He goes, you're scaring the ducks. You take it down a notch, It was just a nightmare. And it didn't make the movie, And it's pretty funny in retrospect, but you're scaring the ducks is memorable. That was good direction. I think that was my first ability to be like, listen to the director, They're seeing the whole thing. Marc Maron Panicked, the new special. Oddly, and this was a big breakthrough, I was not stressed at all. I was very prepared and I knew the material, I knew the show, I made a lot of decisions about how I wanted to go. I thought the set direction in the theater and my outfit, which I started wearing months before, just so I knew that it was what I wanted to wear because I have a history of bad outfits on television. I don't know, it worked out. There was an issue with the shirt, and I'm just kind of person that if I have an issue with even my shirt or my jacket going out on the stage, I'll think about it. And this shirt that I wore in this is a heavy fabric, and when I'd sit down, it would pop open, and between the buttons, you could see my stomach, and I'm like, that's terrible. And by some miracle, I got to the theater, and they had a wardrobe person, and I told her about it, and she goes, we can fix that, and we can just put little snap buttons that you can't see between the buttons. I'm like, oh my God. You just freed me. Thanks to her, I think it was a more focused special. With the podcast, oddly, before I talk to anybody, because of the way I do it, I don't really ask questions. I'm hoping for a conversation to unfold based on the information I have. When I interviewed President Obama when he was still in office and he came to my house, that was stressful for a whole other bunch of reasons. We only had an hour and we did have to sort of outline questions. So to keep him in the zone of just a personal conversation was a little tricky, but, because you don't want to cut off the president. You got Secret Service, you got a motorcade, they've cleared the neighborhood, but they're all pretty stressful because you don't want to come away thinking you didn't honor what they do, but usually it comes out all right. Stick. There's a show that I'm in on Apple TV. There's a stress to acting in television and movies, I think. There's so much waiting in a trailer or wandering around set or just trying to figure out how to occupy yourself. I was just watching classic movies all day. It got to the point where, I'd be in the trailer for 2 or 3 hours and be like, we're going to be ready in 5 minutes. I'm like, oh, I'm just in the middle of The Godfather 2. Can you wait? So that made it easier. So that was one way of dealing with that stress. In Memoriam. This is a movie that is not out yet, but it was my first lead in a movie. Yeah, that was pretty stressful. I had a scene with Sharon Stone, who's just a monster of an actress. I mean, a monster in the way that she's great. We did a couple of takes of this one scene, and I couldn't lock in. And I got to the trailer, and my manager was in there. I'm like, you got to get me out of this. I can't do this. It's Sharon Stone. I'm getting killed out there, I just talked to Al Pacino on the show. There was a couple of things that Pacino had shared with me, or his book did, about kind of locking in, just like, go to the character. Where'd you come from? Where are you going? What are you doing here? So that's a choice. Because, I could have gone into it freaking out and thinking I couldn't do it, and it probably would have been bad. But now I can at least go, well, I did pretty good, and I did the best I could. So that's all I could do, and it worked out all right. Deliver Me From Nowhere, which is out soon. I was a little stressed about that. It's a small part, but it's kind of a pivotal part. I play the engineer in the studio. What was stressful about that, in a way, in that moment, was that the real Bruce Springsteen and the real John Landau, who Jeremy Strong played, were at Video Village the whole time. So after my first kind of like speaking moment, and then there was cut, and I went out into Video Village, and Bruce goes, "You're him! You did it! You're Chuck!" And I'm like, wow, well, that's a coincidence. Luckily, that worked out, Almost Famous. Another small part, but this was my first movie. I was pretty stressed out because I'd never been on a movie set. It was a big set. It was the scene took place at an outdoor arena. It was a concert scene. But again, I just kind of leaned into the nature of this character, who was a promoter and was mad. But Cameron Crowe, he would walk around set saying, we had to import this anger from New York. So he made me feel very comfortable. And even looking back on that one, I kind of like it. And we improvised a bit, with the fights. You can see in the director's cut, there's more fighting with me and Noah Taylor. I think I was probably pretty stressed. Okay, those are my stories. Keep calm. I'm Marc Maron. I hope this was helpful.